So we are going to record, and just so the folks that are out there, again, good morning and welcome. My name is Tara Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of the YWCA Glendale, and this is our Stand Against Racism Critical Conversation with Ardy Kassakhian. And this is part of a week-long initiative around Stand Against Racism that the YWCA Glendale participates as part of our national YWCA USA. If anybody wants more information about that, they can visit our website at glendaleywca.org. The purpose of this conversation is just an opportunity to get to know Ardy a little bit more, but talk about some of the issues around race and diversity and inclusion in a place that I hope is a safe place for you. So I want to thank you so much for being here. For those of you that are listening, this format, how it's going to go is I'm going to basically ask Ardy some questions, and he's going to answer them from his perspective and his own point of view. And at the end, during this time, during the conversation, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. At the end, we'll try to get to some of those questions. If there's questions that are left over, we'll do our best to try to get those out to respond and get those out to folks later. But again, this is an amazing opportunity for us to come together. First of all, congratulations, Ardy, on being a newly elected member of the Glendale City Council.
Thanks.
I bet you probably did not realize that you would be quarantined for the beginning of your term.
You know, it's just my luck. I win a major election and no one wants to shake my hand. It's but you know, as I mentioned, when I took the oath of office via Zoom, I think, or WebEx, online, you know, we don't get to pick and choose the situations that, you know, when or where they find us. The best we can do is just try and deal with them, and we have been doing, or at least I've been trying to do the best that I can, and I hope everyone else is as well. I think right now we're at a very, very difficult period where I think our nerves are wearing thin, and at first it felt like a little bit of a spring break and we were fine with it, lots of family time, and now I think people are really feeling stressed out. So just hang in there. I know it's not easy, but it's necessary, and we're doing well. We're doing well.
Great. Good. Well, again, I know this is definitely a challenging time for a lot of different people, a lot of different things going on, the fear, the anxiety, and we're all still trying to do the good work that we're doing and doing it in a way that is positive and uplifting. So I really hope that this conversation does that for you people out there. I know it's not always easy to talk about race, talk about racism. These are very challenging conversations. So to have this in this format is something new for us. So I hope that people just remain open-minded and have some compassion and know that this is just a beginning of a dialogue. It's not going to solve all the issues that we may be facing in our community, but it's just the beginning of a dialogue. And I'm looking forward to this. And so we're going to get started. So I'm going to go through a set of questions, of course, and we're going to start with, I think one of the things that are important anytime you talk about race and ethnicity and all those things is really kind of understanding the person you're having the conversation with. And so, Ardy, tell us a little bit about your racial or ethnic and cultural background.
So in terms of my racial background, I guess I would consider myself, for lack of a better description, white, certainly pale. I burn easily, and I'm a, you know, somewhat what some would consider the privileged class, right? A white male. Ethnically, though, I'm Armenian. I'm part Greek from my mother's side, and you know, have grown up I was born in the United States and grew up in the United States, so I consider myself an American of Armenian and Greek descent. Now, Armenians are a little bit unique because even though we may say we're Armenian, by ethnicity, Armenians come in many shapes, sizes, and from various backgrounds because of the global diaspora. So when I tell folks, you know, when Armenians interact with each other and they say, okay, you're Armenian, the immediate question is what kind, or where are your parents from, or where are you from? Because then that has some defining characteristics. depending on whether you're an Armenian from Iran, or if you're an Armenian from Lebanon or Syria, or if you're an Armenian from the former Soviet Union and the Republic of Armenia. There's a lot that binds them, but there's also like those slight differences that make us each unique, make us special. So in my case, I don't fit into any of those paradigms, what some may have heard of as Barskahai or Beirutsi or Hayastansi. My father's family is from Jerusalem. The entire family is from Western Armenia, from what some would say historic Armenia, but I like calling it Western Armenia. And they were forced to leave their homes during the Armenian genocide. And my father's family went to Jerusalem in what was then Palestine and later Israel. My mother's family fled to Athens, Greece. And then from Greece, they went to the former Soviet Union back when it was part of the Soviet Union. And then my folks met in the 60s as undergrads in college and came to the United States to continue their graduate studies and settled on the East Coast. So I was born in Boston. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Can you tell me a little bit about your earliest memory of becoming aware of racism or discrimination?
You know, so being Armenian, especially if you're growing up on the East Coast, it's a lot different being an Armenian in Glendale than it is like in some place like New Jersey where I went to kindergarten, right? We moved, even though I was born in Boston, we lived in Canada for a while. I then lived in New Jersey. And, you know, when you have a name like Ardy Kassakhian or Ardy Kassakhian, you know, you immediately have, like, even at a young age, an elevator speech that you give to people. You know, I remember the first day of kindergarten, I came back home, and, you know, in school we had to all wear our names on a little, that were written on a little card, and it hung around our necks like with a piece of yarn. And everyone had these, like, you know, nice little short Anglo names, and I felt like I was, you know, carrying the cross up to Calvary. You know, like I had this giant albatross hanging around my neck. With Ardy Kassakhian, my full name, because I never shortened my name until very recently to Ardy in my adult life. So I came home and I was frustrated with my parents that everyone had these short names and mine was like massively long. And my parents explained, they said, look, you were born in the United States, you get to pick and choose, you know, a lot of things in your life, including who you'll marry, and but the one thing that your parents give you that you'll always carry with you, that'll be a reminder of what your roots are and where you come from, is your name. Mm-hmm. So we gave you the most Armenian name we could think of. And Ardashes is truly like one of the most Armenian names, because Ardashes, along with Ardashir and Farsi, like these are the names of some of the very noble, King Ardashes was the first king of Armenia. He's known for uniting all of the Armenian princes under one nation. And we're talking about, I want to say like in the 4th century, 5th century BC. So they're like, you know, you have a very honorable Armenian name and you ought to know about it and tell people about it and this, that. So, you know, the next week at school, I was teaching my classmates about Mount Ararat and where Noah's Ark came to land and like the significance of being Armenian. So I knew I was different, but I didn't feel like an outsider. On the East Coast, it's very different than it is here. To feel different being Armenian didn't really happen to me until I came to Glendale. And that was the first time, even though ironically I was among people who could pronounce my name, it was the first time I encountered sentiments that were, you know, that didn't make me feel very comfortable. I remember being at my elementary school, and one of my classmates, a young Filipino kid who we're still friends with, he came up and he's like, "Can you believe it? So-and-so called you an Armo." And I had never even heard the term Armo before, which is for Armenians like the derogatory term of choice for those trying to denigrate them. So that was one example. The other was obviously as a young Armenian, when you learn about the genocide and that one group targeted you for extermination, that becomes a quick lesson that, you know, not everyone always gets along. And for Armenians, it's very strange, for young Armenians, especially the ones who come from the Western Armenian background, because the Armenians were members of the civil society of the Ottoman Empire. They were professionals, they were artists, they were teachers. And when they dressed, it's not like they dressed differently. They looked like the other Turks, you know, they wore red fezzes and suits. And, you know, when I remember seeing books when I was a young child and seeing that, you know, we would go to plays, let's say at the cultural center, and the plays would be performed at the turn of the last century, and Armenians would be dressed with what most of us as Americans would imagine Turks to look like. Plays by the famous Armenian playwright Hagop Baronyan, who wrote about life in the Ottoman Empire among the Armenian aristocracy. And then I look at these books where men who are dressed just like those people with fezzes holding rifles are killing Armenians, people like me, and it was a moment of confusion. And so there was this explanation of, my parents had very adult conversations with me at a very young age about these types of things. So that was my awareness. And then obviously, when you do come from an Armenian background, and you're aware of your personal experiences, it creates, this. This is certainly not the case. I can't speak for everyone, but at least in me, it created an acute awareness of injustice, racial issues, people not being treated fairly or being respected. So that was something that always